Welcome to Rare Breed Brotherhood. God doesn't give the hardest battles to the toughest men. He creates the toughest men through the hardest battles. If you're a Sigma male, you've probably asked yourself more than once, why does it always feel like life tests me harder than others? While everyone else seems to take the easy road, yours always feels uphill, silent, and full of unseen challenges. But here's the truth. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. God doesn't test Sigma men because they're weak. He tests them because they're different, because they can handle what others can't. You weren't made to follow crowds or live on autopilot. You were built to move in silence, question everything, and lead from the shadows. That kind of path can't be handed to you. It has to be earned. Every time you face isolation, betrayal, confusion, or slow progress, it's not a sign to give up. It's a sign you're being sharpened. You're not like the rest, so you don't get tested like the rest. Your strength comes from walking alone and still choosing to do the right thing when no one's watching. This journey is tough, yes, but so are you, and you're not alone. Other Sigma men are walking this path too, each silently rising, one battle at a time. So if you're being tested, take it as proof. God sees something in you that the world isn't ready for yet. But when the time comes, you will be. Stay steady. You weren't built for comfort, you were built for impact. Let's dive in. Rare breeds. Number 1. God uses delay as a mirror. Waiting is never just about the clock ticking or the calendar pages flipping. For Sigma men, the delay is more than a pause. It's a hard, honest reflection staring them right in the face. When God holds back the breakthrough, it's not to punish or frustrate, but to reveal what's really going on inside. In those long, quiet seasons when it feels like nothing is happening, something very real is being uncovered. Their fears. Not the surface-level worries about failure or rejection, but deep-rooted fears they've hidden even from themselves. Maybe it's the fear of being truly alone, or the fear of losing control over their own path. The delay forces those fears out of the shadows because nothing waits forever. The silence screams louder than any noise, and it makes them confront what they've been avoiding. This waiting also shows what still controls them. It exposes where their trust isn't whole. Maybe they say they believe in God's timing, but deep down they're still clinging to their own plans and timelines. Or maybe they're holding on to anger from past wounds, unable to fully surrender. The delay becomes a mirror that doesn't lie, showing exactly what they haven't let go of. Most importantly, this waiting season tests trust. It's easy to trust when things go your way, but when doors stay closed, the mirror asks, do you really trust God or just the idea of Him? Do you trust Him with your future, your purpose, and your heart when you can't see the way forward? The delay isn't a setback, it's a spiritual checkpoint, a moment to get real with yourself, your faith, and your fears. When you finally pass this test, you don't just move forward. You move forward transformed, stronger, and unshakable. Because the mirror never just shows, it prepares you for what's next. Number 2, because when they rise, they must be untouchable. When God decides to elevate a Sigma man, He doesn't do it quickly, and that's no accident. See, it's easy to admire someone once they've made it, but people don't realize what had to be burned out of them before they got there. God doesn't want to just lift a Sigma man up. He wants him to be untouchable, not in an arrogant way, but in a solid, unshakable, can't-break-me kind of way. Before the spotlight, God puts them through the shadows. Why? Because pressure builds character. The tests they face, the delays, the betrayals, the silent seasons, they're not random. They're stress tests. God's checking, can you carry the weight of what you're praying for? Anyone can look stable when life is calm. But can you still move with grace when life is unfair? Can you keep your peace when you're misunderstood, overlooked, or attacked? God is watching all of that. Not just how they act in public, but who they are in private, when no one's watching and everything feels like it's falling apart. The elevation isn't just about success. It's about sustainability. God doesn't want them rising fast only to crash harder, so He trains them in silence, in struggle, in seasons that feel like abandonment. So when their moment comes, nothing can shake them. Not rumors, not pressure, not failure, not fame. When Sigma men rise, they don't need applause to keep going. They've already been through enough to stand tall without it. They don't seek validation. They walk with conviction. So when God finally opens that door, it doesn't make them, it just reveals them. Because all the pain, all the testing, all the waiting, it didn't crush them, it prepared them. Now they're not just elevated, they're bulletproof. Number 3. Because Sigma men can't be given power without depth. God doesn't just throw power at people who look the part. He's not impressed by charisma, confidence, or how well someone plays the game. Especially when it comes to Sigma men, the lone wolves, the deep thinkers, the quiet movers. Power has to come with depth, or it becomes dangerous. See, Sigma men are built differently. They don't crave attention, and they don't follow trends. They think for themselves, act on instinct, and carry a kind of inner strength that can shake a room without saying much. But here's the thing. Without pressure, that strength stays on the surface. It looks solid, but it cracks under real weight. That's why God tests them harder than most. He puts them through the kind of pain that doesn't just bruise the ego, it breaks it down. He allows seasons of confusion, isolation, betrayal, not because he's punishing them, but because he's digging deep, he's building roots. Without that depth, their independence becomes a weapon, not a tool. They'd push people away for the wrong reasons. They'd lead without empathy. They'd rise, but leave destruction behind. The testing adds something no shortcut ever could: wisdom. It teaches them patience. It makes them think twice before speaking. It humbles them so deeply that when they do finally gain power, they don't use it to control. They use it to guide, quietly, intentionally. God knows Sigma men were born to lead from behind the curtain, not under the spotlight. But to do that right, they have to know themselves, not just what they want, but who they are when everything is taken away. That's why the process is so painful. That's why the delays are so personal. Because when they finally step into their power, they won't just be strong, they'll be unbreakable. And more importantly, they'll be ready. Number 4. They're not meant to belong. They're meant to transcend. Sigma men aren't built to fit into boxes. Not in society, not in religion, and not even in circles where everyone claims to follow the same God. Their path has always been different, not because they're better, but because they're wired for something deeper, something beyond belonging. God doesn't isolate them to hurt them. He does it to strip away the need to be accepted. From a young age, Sigma men feel like outsiders, even in places where they should belong. They walk into rooms full of smiles and still feel alone. That's not by accident, that's by design. See, belonging often comes with compromise. You have to talk a certain way, think a certain way, and follow unspoken rules just to stay in the group. But Sigma men are not wired to conform. They question everything. They see the cracks in systems others blindly follow. And that includes the spiritual crowd. If the crowd worships routine more than truth, the Sigma man will step away, even if it means walking alone. God honors that courage, but first he tests it. He lets them feel the sting of being misunderstood, the weight of walking solo, and the silence that comes with refusing to fake it. Why? Because once they're free from the need for approval, they become unstoppable. Their faith becomes personal, not performative. They stop chasing validation and start chasing truth. This isn't about rebellion, it's about transcendence. Sigma men weren't born to blend in. They were born to rise above, to think higher, and to lead differently. That kind of calling requires spiritual independence, the kind you only gain when God tears down everything shallow, including the desire to be liked. So no, they're not meant to belong. They're meant to be set apart. And in that sacred isolation, God shapes them for something far greater than acceptance, purpose. Number 5. Their wisdom must come from scars, not scriptures alone. Sigma. Men are not the kind to just sit in pews, nod along, and memorize verses. That's not how they're wired. They don't blindly accept words, not even holy ones, until they've lived them, questioned them, wrestled with them. For them, real wisdom doesn't come from just reading scripture. It comes from being broken by life and still finding God in the rubble. God knows this. That's why he doesn't teach them through comfort. He teaches them through conflict, through pain, through sleepless nights, betrayals, closed doors, and gut-wrenching silence. It's not that scripture doesn't matter. It's that Sigma men need the truth to become real. They don't just want to know it. They need to feel it. And that only happens when they bleed for it. For Sigma men, the test is the classroom, and the wound is the diploma. Anyone can quote wisdom, but when a Sigma man speaks, you can hear the scars in his voice. His words don't come from someone else's sermon. They come from the fire he barely survived. That's why when he talks, people listen. There's weight behind his silence, depth behind his eyes. God lets Sigma men go through the kind of trials that turn faith from theory into truth. He lets them lose what they thought they couldn't live without. He lets them hit walls, question everything, and stand in the dark until they stop looking for light and start becoming it. This kind of wisdom can't be faked. It can't be handed down. It has to be earned, the hard way. And God chooses Sigma men for that journey, not because they're weak, but because they're strong enough to carry wisdom that's not just read, but lived. They don't quote truth to sound holy. They speak it because they survived it. Number 6. God needs them to stop saving people who refuse to swim. One of the earliest mistakes Sigma men make is believing they can save everyone. That if they just show up, love harder, give more, stay longer, people will change. But God doesn't allow them to stay naive for long. Because while their heart is genuine, their energy is sacred, and God won't let it be wasted on people who have no intention of rising. Sigma men often carry a silent weight, the fixer's burden. They're wired to protect, to guide, to lift people out of chaos, but over time, they learn a brutal truth. You can't save people who refuse to swim. You can throw them every lifeline, give them every warning, stay up every night praying for them. But if they choose to drown, that's on them. God starts to teach them painful discernment through experience. He lets them pour themselves out for the wrong people, the ones who take but never change, the ones who want comfort, not growth. And it's in that heartbreak that they finally get it. Not everyone wants to be saved. Some just want to pull you under with them. That realization hits hard. It feels cold at first. But God isn't trying to harden their heart. He's teaching them how to protect it. He needs them to stop confusing self-sacrifice with wisdom. He needs them to understand that their calling isn't to carry dead weight. It's to walk their path with power, not constantly drag others along behind them. God doesn't want them drained. He wants them sharp, focused, disciplined. He needs them to recognize who's actually fighting and who's just pretending to struggle while pulling them down. The test isn't about being heartless. It's about being clear. Clear about who's ready, who's willing, and who's using them as a crutch. When Sigma men learn that, they stop rescuing and start rising. Because their purpose isn't to be everyone's lifeguard. It's to be a force of truth, even if it means letting go. Number 7. Because elevation would destroy them if they're still angry. A Sigma man carrying silent rage is like a volcano in a suit. Calm on the surface, but burning underneath. And here's the part nobody says out loud. God will hold back their breakthrough on purpose, not to punish them, but to protect them. Because when elevation meets unhealed wounds, it doesn't bless, it breaks. Sigma men often carry rage that's buried deep, rage from childhood, from being ignored, misunderstood, manipulated, or blamed for things they never caused. And because they're so private, no one sees it. They function. They succeed. But underneath, there's this heavy silence filled with questions like, why wasn't I enough? Why didn't they protect me? Why did I have to raise myself emotionally? God sees that storm, and he knows if he gives them power, platform, or influence before they heal, that rage will infect everything. It'll turn leadership into control, wisdom into arrogance, protection into domination. That's not who they are, it's just the wound talking. But the wound doesn't disappear just because they rise. So God delays, he slows it all down. Not because they're not gifted, but because they're too important to let self-destruction happen in public. He gives them time, space, hard seasons that force them to sit with that pain. Not bury it, not numb it, but deal with it. He makes them forgive people who never apologized, heal from things no one clapped for, mourn the parts of themselves they had to kill off just to survive. It's brutal, but it's necessary. Because the version of them that's still angry can't carry what God's preparing. That version leads from hurt, not purpose. And when they finally heal, the anger becomes fuel, the silence becomes strength, and the man that emerges, he's not just elevated, he's transformed because God didn't delay to stop him, he delayed to save him. Number 8, they're not supposed to be liked. They're supposed to be feared, respectfully. Here's the truth about Sigma men. They were never built to be liked. That's not the assignment. Their energy is too sharp, their presence too raw, their truth too disruptive. God didn't put them here to win people over. He put them here to wake people up. And that doesn't come with applause. It comes with resistance. So God starts by testing them early. He strips away their craving for approval, the silent urge to be accepted, understood, or applauded. Because if a Sigma man still needs people to like him, he'll end up silencing his own voice just to stay comfortable. And God can't use that. God needs him feared, not in a toxic, egotistical way, but in a respectful, unshakable way. The kind of fear that commands attention without saying a word. The kind of presence that makes lazy minds sit up straight. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. It shifts the entire room. But to carry that, a man has to be comfortable being alone. That's why God pulls him into isolation. That's why he lets people misunderstand him, misjudge him, and walk away. It's not punishment. It's training. Because once that Sigma man no longer bends for acceptance, he becomes dangerous, in the best way possible. He can now speak truth without flinching. He can walk away without guilt. He can challenge systems without needing the crowd's backup. Charm wins followers, but conviction builds legacies. And Sigma men were never called to entertain. They were called to confront. Confront what's fake, what's weak, what's broken but pretending to be whole. God doesn't need them liked. He needs them respected, even feared. And to carry that kind of power, they must be forged in silence, not shaped by praise. Because the man who no longer needs to be liked can no longer be controlled. Number 9, they must be trusted with silence before being trusted with influence. Everybody wants influence, but not everybody can handle silence. And that's where God begins with Sigma men, not with applause, not with recognition, with silence, deafening silence. No praise, no reassurance, no confirmation. Just long, quiet seasons where nothing moves, no feedback, no signs, no help. And the question that echoes is, can you still walk in your purpose when it feels like no one's watching? This is where most people fold. They stop. They question their calling. They wait for approval before taking action. But Sigma men, they're being trained to move differently. God doesn't test them with noise. He tests them with the absence of it. Because silence reveals something that success never can. Who are you when there's no one clapping? Before God gives them a platform, he watches how they act when there's no audience. Can they still pray when heaven feels closed? Can they still show up when there's no reward? Can they stay committed when no one sees the effort? Because influence is loud. It's messy. It brings pressure, opinions, spotlight, and expectations. And if a man hasn't learned how to ground himself in quiet, he'll lose himself in noise. That's why God lets Sigma men be overlooked for so long. Not because they're not ready, but because they need to be rooted, not rushed. The silence doesn't mean they're forgotten. It means they're being forged. When nobody claps, nobody notices, and nobody helps. That's where their real strength is built. That's where the fake falls away. And what remains? Unshakable conviction. The kind of conviction that doesn't flinch when the spotlight finally hits. So when God finally gives them influence, they don't use it to chase validation. They use it to build something eternal, because they didn't rise by being seen. They rose by being trusted in silence. Number 10. Their rejections are redirections to original purpose. For Sigma men, rejection hits different. It doesn't just sting, it shakes their foundation. Job turned down, friendship suddenly distant. A door that looked like destiny gets slammed shut. And for a moment it feels personal, like life's playing a cruel joke. But God, He's not punishing them, He's rerouting them with precision. See, Sigma men aren't wired for the easy path. Their purpose isn't mainstream, and neither is their process. So while others get green lights, shortcuts, and open arms, Sigma men often face silence and slammed doors. But here's the twist. Every rejection is actually a disguised redirection, one that forces them back to the road only they were built to walk. The truth is, most Sigma men try to fit in early on. They try to follow the map everyone else is using, the career path, the groupthink, the normal relationships. But it never quite sits right, it drains them. And so God uses rejection like a GPS reroute. Loud, sudden, uncomfortable, but spot on. That job didn't fall through by accident. That person didn't walk away at random. That plan didn't collapse because they were unworthy. It collapsed because it wasn't the mission. Sigma men don't just have purpose, they are purpose. And because of that, God won't let them get comfortable in places that dilute who they are. He'll pull them out, even if it breaks their heart. Not to hurt them, to reclaim them. Every no, every betrayal, every painful shut door isn't a failure. It's a violent nudge back to their original design. It's only after the dust settles that it clicks. If that door had stayed open, I would have stayed lost. So the next time they're rejected, they don't spiral. They recalibrate. Because they know, when God closes something, He's not being cruel, He's preserving what's rare. And real purpose doesn't need a crowd, just clarity. Number 11. Their path is proof-based, not talk-based. Sigma men don't get to talk their way through life. That's just not their lane. While others can bluff, preach, and float by on borrowed wisdom, Sigma men are held to a different standard. God doesn't let them get away with theory, because they're not meant to be talkers. They're meant to be proof. That's why their path feels heavier, more isolated, less glamorous, more painful. While some are busy posting quotes, Sigma men are living them in silence behind closed doors with no one to cheer them on. But that's the difference. God isn't raising a motivational speaker. He's building a living blueprint. People don't watch Sigma men because they talk well. They watch them because their life hits different. Their choices, their silence, their consistency. It all speaks louder than words ever could. And for that reason, God puts them through tests most people couldn't survive. Not to break them, but to make their life undeniable evidence. It's easy to say you trust God until everything's stripped away. It's easy to preach about purpose until the path makes zero sense. It's easy to say you've healed until you're face to face with the thing that once shattered you. But Sigma men, they're being trained to stand there, feel it all, and not flinch. Because the world doesn't need more talk. It needs proof. Solid, scarred, silent proof that you can go through hell and not lose your integrity. That you can be overlooked, mocked, misunderstood, and still not quit. That you can rise without bitterness, lead without needing credit, and stay grounded even when no one's clapping. God knows words are cheap. That's why He doesn't rush Sigma men. He refines them. Because when they finally speak, it won't be theory. It'll be truth, paid for in pain. And people won't just listen, they'll believe. In conclusion, strength doesn't come from what you can do. It comes from overcoming the things you once thought you couldn't. If you're a Sigma man, understand this. God's testing isn't a punishment or a delay. It's a purpose. You're not here to be like everyone else, to fit in, or to be easily understood. You're different because you're built to move through life on your own terms. That means the road will be tougher, lonelier, and way more demanding. But here's the truth nobody tells you. Those tests are sharpening you into something rare. They're stripping away the fake, the easy, and the shallow parts so what's left is real. Real strength, real clarity, real depth. God is preparing you not for a moment of fame or applause, but for a lifetime of impact. The elevation you're waiting for. It's not just about you standing taller. It's about you becoming a vessel of something greater, someone unshakable, unbreakable, and unstoppable. You're a Sigma man because you don't settle for the surface. You're wired to lead in the shadows, to create where there's no path, and to stand firm when everyone else gives up. The world may not get you now, but that's okay, because you're not meant for the crowd. You're meant to be the quiet storm that changes everything without shouting. So when you're tested, don't lose heart. Lean into the pressure. Trust the process. Every challenge is proof you're being made ready for the level you're destined to reach. You're not just surviving these tests. You're becoming legendary. And when the time comes, the world will finally see it too. Thank you for watching. God bless you.